Yeah.
Okay, and we are live. Okay, here we go. We're back. One again. We are here. We're live. We're laying it down with Big D yet again. I am your host, Big D. And today, I'm joined by somebody I've been really excited to talk to for a while, Mr. Jeff, editor-in-chief. You may know him as Mnmzzz over at Dust 2. We're all over the place there. Jeff, how you doing? You do more than just be editor-in-chief at Dust 2, right?
I keep busy. I mean, editor in chief at Dust 2 US, head tournament admin for the Dust 2 US Eagle Master Series. I'm the guy who does all the travel, and I write an article here and there.
And also a Liquipedia admin on top of everything, no?
And a Liquipedia admin too. Yeah, there you go. You did your research,
I did.
which is probably just look at the Twitter bio and I'm following you moving around, and it's very
It's
like
difficult because I'm
it,
getting comfy.
it's entertaining. It gives me something to keep an eye on. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, yeah. Well, how are you doing today, Jeff?
Not bad. Gearing up for I Am Dallas, of course, which is going to start next week at the time of recording. So that's something to look forward to.
What will you be doing at I Am Dallas? I'm assuming you're media while you're there.
Right. So I'm leaving on next Sunday, and I'm going to be there covering the group stage, Impact Finals, and then playoffs.
Okay. How is this? This is how long have you been doing this for?
Just esports
Yeah,
journalism.
esports journalism in general.
Gosh, late 2018.
And how did you get started in it?
Well, so the original editor in chief of Dust US, Joe Tolkien Fanatic, he was also a Liquipedia admin. So like on the regular, I would beg him for a job. And then after like maybe the third time begging, he was finally like, okay, we'll give you a trial writer position. And I started with them in December, November 2018, and I just kept writing and survived, two editor in chiefs, and now I'm the big man on top of the totem pole.
Yeah, you are. So are you're what does an editor in chief do? Like what you said you write an article occasionally, but I assume you don't get to do as much of the like article writing as you used to do.
Oh no, I still write a ton of
Okay, that
articles.
is
No, that's
you.
that's patent. Yeah. Right, yeah. I would say I mean, we're a really small team. It's me full time, and then we have three part-time writers, Ben, Leo, and Sam. So my job for them is mainly I set the agenda every day. I create a to-do list of articles we want to hit. I usually edit their work if I'm around. uh, I help, cover some of the bigger stories. I'm the one usually talking to sources for like roster reports, talking to people for like drama and investigative journalism, whereas they they can do what they want as well, but then they mainly do like the day-to-day coverage, your tournament results, your invites, uh your just sort of daily coverage topics.
Okay. Well, yeah. Dust 2 is one of those things that, I've seen from the outside for a long time and always wondered how the inner workings go. So thank you for shedding light on that. How did you get into Counter Strike? Like, how long have you been playing Counter Strike? And is Counter Strike the only esport that you cover?
So I started playing Counter-Strike in about 2015, maybe early 2016. In the first, when I first started playing Counter-Strike, I think for like maybe the first year and a half, I only played that one game mode Demolition, where you'd have like, the set weapon every round, and you would go like Lake, Bank, Safe House, and I think Saint Mark's or Saint
Mm-hmm.
Mark's. Because I was too afraid to play competitive with like the real players. So because I was like, I'm shit, so I'm never. So it took me like a year before I was like, okay, now I know enough about the game to go and play. To go and play competitive, go and play competitive with the other Gold Novas frolicking around. As for other esports, mm, I like my other interests are Smash Bros. I follow the melee scene somewhat closely. Uh, I was briefly into Valorant during its beta, but I kind of stopped giving a shit when the beta was over because it just ended up being ability shooter
Mm-hmm.
shit. But other than that, like Counter Strike's been the only esport that like I spend most of my time focused on.
Okay. Yeah, I started dabbling a little bit in my casting last year with some other stuff with like Rocket League and Deadlock as it was like emerging, and I quickly realized that I just only really care about Counter Strike. Like, what is it about Counter Strike that makes it so special to you?
Hmm. I think Counter Strike has the for me, I'm not like the biggest, like, I'm not like a guy who will go and write like an analysis article, like, oh, what did, Mnmzzz do really good in this round? And I don't feel like I have a particularly deep understanding of the game. But I think like Counter-Strike has the most serious and well-developed industry behind the esports. And that's what's like, most interesting to me is you have, you know, I think it has a really good mix of decentralization and also like powerful stakeholders in the sense that, Valorant is entirely decided on the whims of Riot is entirely decided on the rims of Riot, while smaller esports don't really have like big players, like they don't have big organizations like your Liquids, your Navis, your Vitalities. And I think having like Counter Strike having it be so decentralized, but also having big organizations in it creates like a perfect mix of drama and things to cover, and intrigue and mystery. Uh, that makes it like enticing to me because there's always something going on behind the scenes. There's always something you can peel back the layers on, something to know. Um, the developments of the circuit, the roster changes, all that's been like deeply intriguing to me.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I haven't thought about that. Valve really does allow for so much. Like one of the things that makes Valve such a unique gaming company is their games are very community driven. Like Counter Strike, even going back to its start, it is a Half Life mod originally that developed into this thing that it is today. And yeah, Valve definitely lets the community grow a lot, like adapt and change their game and let it grow organically. How do you feel about the VRS system? It's been about 5 months now since it's been implemented. What are some ups and downs you've seen from it?
I think the biggest upside of it is and this is kind of what Valve advertises the reason why they started it, is it peels back to like a lot of the nonsense that goes on with invites. There's no more situations where you have to like wonder like why did that team catch an invite or why was this team not invited. It's much more transparent in who's going to what tournament. I think back to like the CCTs that used to be run at the start of the year or last year in North America, where you'd have like a random Russian team that's never played in America, or hasn't played a single HLTV match in 4 years, randomly catching an invite, and you have to kind of go like, oh, why did they get an invite? Are they friends with the tournament organizer? Are they here to match fix? Are they, is one of the players just like really good friends with the head admin of the league? And Valve does a really good job of peeling back, making it so like situations like that don't really happen anymore to an extent. I would say the main downside is all the I would say the main downside is the fact that there's a lot of ambiguity. Like, so there's no ambiguity, but it also relies on a pretty like arcane tome of wisdom in the form of like the tournament operation requirements. How you can do invites, when you can do invites, who you're allowed to invite, the dates you need to get everything. And we saw like at the start of the year, a lot of TOs suffered with that, and it's a lot of TOs suffered with that, and the fact that the rules are always changing. The fact that the rules are always changing with the regular tour updates, I think is far from ideal. But overall, I'm pretty happy. I think with the VRS, especially as it, I think it makes it a lot more like transparent on who's going to go to the major and who's going to get regular S tier event invites.
Yeah. How do you think that I feel like it's already helping out like smaller land tournaments like or smaller tournaments like Frag, and I mean obviously Eagle Masters is set up with VRS as well. Do you think that this is something that will help grow the kind of like tournament circuit here in underdeveloped regions?
I think the biggest thing for Philadelphia, and this is something I've had a chance to talk to them about, is that they were surprised to see to what extent international teams from Brazil, from Europe, were willing to like pay the money to fly their team over to Vegas or to Philadelphia or to Canada in July to just go play one of their local events, because the combination of the land boost you get on the VRS plus having like a $10,000 or above prize pool means, I mean, we saw for I think NIP they went from something like 85th in the world to 36 in the world. So without too much extra effort from Frag, just by being, by being a VRS tournament and aligning with sort of Valve's preferences, which, mind you, it doesn't take a whole lot of effort from them. They just have to, announce their event ahead of time. They have to, not do any direct event invites, et cetera, et cetera. They were able to, bring in much larger teams to their circuit that may have not otherwise attended, and I think that'll be really good for them moving forward because if they bring a European squad in, then more NA teams will naturally want to come in. If which will naturally increase viewership, which will increase sponsorship, hopefully. And it's very it's very good in that sense because otherwise, before with like Frag would have to make a specific arrangement with like Blast or with ESL to have their tournaments matter. Back in 2021, they made an agreement with Blast to have the Frag 15 finals like count as a qualifier for some Blast qualifier, but like that's something you have to negotiate with them every event and be like, oh, if we do this, we'll shout you guys out on the broadcast, or you can include our numbers in your pitch deck, or we'll pay you or you'll pay us, and it's like that's obviously a lot more of a pain in the ass, and it's lot less guaranteed. So with the VRS, we know that every LAN event matters, and it's naturally good for someone like Frag.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, and do you think that more lands are going to start? Like, do you think we'll start seeing more of a land circuit pop up as like collegiate Counter Strike becomes more of a like I've watched collegiate Counter Strike start to become more and more of a spectated thing over the last 4 or 5 years. Do you think we'll start seeing more land tournaments because of that, or is Frag going to kind of always hold that singular land tournament in our region title?
Um, when you say collegiate, I guess I don't understand. The problem with collegiate is that it's not really like interlinked with the rest of the NA circuit. So they can't, of course, they can't hold VRS tournaments. They, target a very specific niche set of players playing for, niche orgs that only exist to play their one tournament. Um, so I don't necessarily see the connection there. If you could
Yeah,
maybe
I
give me,
brought up collegiate just because that's the only other like circuit of Counter Strike that I see playing any kind of like LAN tournaments in North America. So I was wondering if maybe some of those would like as those players graduate and there's not as much of a landscape for players to play in LAN other than Frag. Will some of those like do we see more of those LAN circuits grow? But I think you answered my question honestly when you said that those are very isolated circuit tournaments that don't really interact with the rest of our ecosystem. So I don't think there is a connection actually.
there's other TOs out there. I know there's like a tournament that runs in Columbus, Ohio. I believe it's like GA or like global something something. And there's some guys who run tournaments in Texas, and then there's ROK who runs tournaments in the Miami suburbs. The problem for them is they can't necessarily scale up their operations large enough to have a prize pool and to have the like social media reach and stuff to become a VR to become a VRS tournament. I mean, they could apply, but with like a $2,000 prize pool, it's not, it doesn't really cross the threshold to be big enough for teams to want to travel out there. And I don't think like they necessarily want that as well because a lot of these, a lot of these like small like land cafe TOs are more interested in bringing in like daily customers or attracting like local players. I don't really see anyone else really trying to create like a VRS tournament, a VRS land tournament in North America right now. We've had like some people like some scam artists try. Like we had USEA last year try to do it. We had
Oh, did
that
USEA?
guy from
Yeah, did
Perseverance.
USEA fall through? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah, they
Oh,
did. Wait,
I never heard.
did you not know? I'm sorry. I'm sorry to break it to you like this. It was a
Yeah,
scam.
I mean, I figured as much. I don't know how I got caught up with Perseverance because $100,000 land tournament sounded mighty fraudulent to me. But you know, you live and learn, I guess. But no, I didn't know for sure about USCA. I thought it was just coming soon.
No, no. I mean, they posted like so. Here's my conspiracy theory with them. So they announced this tournament, right? And I think their whole point was, okay, so all we have to do is like put some graphics together, send some people some emails, put out a couple tweets, and we'll like see like what interest we get, and maybe some sponsors will come to us and offer to pay for the league. And then like, okay, we can run it, or we can like put something kind of shitty together and see like how much money we can make from it. But I think what happened with them is they didn't get like enough like sponsor interest right out the bat, right out the way. They're like, oh, we're not going to be able to pay ourselves like $3,000, $5,000 a month for the next 6 months. So like, what's the fucking point? And they just kind of cut, they cut it around because, 'cause, 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 'cause they just kind of cut, they cut it around because when I interviewed those guys behind USDA originally last year, I think like around June, their whole thing was like, I was like, what sponsors do you have? And they're like, oh, we have sponsors, but we can't reveal them right now. Like, what's the venue? Oh, we have a venue lined up, but we can't reveal it right now. It's like, what protects, is like the prize pool and escrow or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, but like we can't, prove the it's like secured or whatever. And so I think it was like dumb because if you like looked up the guy, I think his name was like Ben Williamson. His whole shtick, from what I can tell from his website, is like he creates a company. It's like, oh, we sell like biomedical blood testing equipment or whatever, and we're the best in the industry. And I think like his whole point was like, oh, we do that, and then investors are like, whoa, people selling biomedical blood testing equipment. Like here's like I'm an angel investor. Here's like $2 million to get your company off the ground. Or he had like another thing where it was like a car storage luxury car storage business in Naples, Florida, and he's like, put out like a CGI render of it and said like I own this a lot, own this like strip part of a strip mall, and I'm assuming people were like, oh, dude, I love to store my car. Like, here's some money to build up your business and get it off the ground. So I think that's just like another one of those things where it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, he's hoping like, oh, I can, do USDA and trick some, idiots into giving me money, and then I might try to make it a legitimate business, or I might not. But once like that didn't happen, he's like, fuck this, and just cut and ran.
Huh. Well, I'm sorry for interrupting you there. You were talking about that there have been a few fraudulent people on land, but nobody really poking their head out and trying to set anything else up besides frag.
Yeah, I don't think there's because and like one final point about the USEA guy is like I just kept calling him because I had his phone number and his voice box was full, so I called him like 7 times, and then I called him like seven more times like the next day, and then like I called him like 6 months later, and then his trademark lapsed and it's over. And then with that perseverance guy, like I found his phone number and I called him like 6 or 7 times and didn't pick up, obviously. So like um it might change, but like you don't see it. I mean, running a LAN tournament is expensive and it requires a lot of like, expertise. And for a lot of it, it's like to get like the PCs, the broadcast equipment, the furniture for like the tables, the couches, the chairs, all that. Like it's a pretty big hump to get over unless you have like an established business or an established pool of wealth to jump in. And I don't really see anyone doing that right now. Not that it's not possible, but I don't, there's like no example I can point to and say like, hey, these guys are like a plucky startup who are like trying to take their Counter-Strike business to the next level.
Well, I hope we see more land someday. I know that we've been talking at OSS about pop, the hope is by this time next year OSS is getting some kind of land tournament set up for like finals or playoffs. But does Eagle Masters have any plans for future land tournaments, or is it going to remain online only for now?
I would I would love to do a LAN at some point. I probably can't commit to there being a LAN like this year, maybe sometime next year. It's not something we've really talked about internally yet. Still a very small team. We're powered by Inui, and they're of course the problem is like they're the ones who are helping us run this league, and they're a matchmaking platform, and you don't use on LAN, a matchmaking platform. So it's kind of like we have different incentives there. It's like they want people to join their matchmaking platform and to play on their platform and get attached to their platform. And by having these players go to LAN, they're not using the platform. So it's kind of we'd have to find someone else who would be willing to do it with us, or if Inui just want to be like a true sponsor, like they give us money, we advertise them on broadcast and on socials and all that jazz. But it's something. I mean, it's something I would definitely love to do. I would just need to find the resources to get it together to do just like a complete, maybe like eight team complete invite land event where it's like, oh, end of the year, $25,000 prize pool, the top eight VRS ranked NA teams. We all, get it. We all go to like a land center in like I don't know, like Philadelphia or like Chicagoland or Atlanta. We just play a weekend of Counter Strike, and then someone wins some money and some VRS points, and that'd be sick. But it's not something we have really the resources for right now.
Yeah, resources seem fairly scarce in Counter Strike. It's everybody doing it just for the passion. It feels like. I was gonna ask you too. You've got a very unique perspective on North America, or unique vantage point for North American Counter Strike. being a very like you're not a player, you're not an org owner. You are a tournament organizer now, but that's also somebody who remains unbiased, right? Like all teams are equal to them for the most part. But from your vantage point, what is lacking in NACS, and why what does it need to get itself back on the world stage to tier 1 with more teams involved?
That's a very tough question to answer because that's like it's what's like the secret to immortality. What's the Coca-Cola secret formula? How do I pick up chicks? It's like something everyone wants to know, but no one has it necessarily like if someone knew the answer to it, like we wouldn't need to ask the question. Uh,
No, but
hmm.
I'm sure you have thoughts. I agree with that, but I do want to hear what your thoughts are from because you are definitely invested in the region, probably maybe more so than anyone else.
I think the hardest part is like our teams just aren't very good sometimes, and that's kind of the big thing holding us back. uh you see teams like M80 go to these, go to Astana and then they just get their shit kicked in, and you're just like, oh well, the team like looks good on paper. But even during periods of, I mean, during periods where we were like pretty good, seeing when like Liquid was winning trophies, when like years before when we had Cloud9 being like a competitive team before 2018. I would say, it's talent and it's infrastructure. We need just, we need a better breed of players, and we need more tournaments. We need more opportunities to boot camp. We need more organizations to get in. That's like what we lack versus Europe is just pure hard infrastructure to pay teams to allow them to compete more, to allow them to practice more, allow them to boot camp more, to allow them to find more good players. And it's that's like one of those things where it's like everyone's been saying that for, I mean, that's been something that's been said probably since like 2017, 2018, is like NA needs more infrastructure, NA needs more infrastructure. But it's one of those things that's like really, you say, oh, why can't we just have more? I just want, can I get some infrastructure? And then it's like, oh, can I have like $1 million? You ask like, Cloud9, why can't you get back into Counter Strike? And like, do you have a couple $1 billion to waste on it? And you're like, oh yeah, like we have no money. I forgot.
Yeah, it does. It does cost money, but I mean, do you feel like we're on an uptick? I mean, I'm in full agreement with you. What we've been saying, it feels like NA has very much stagnated for a long period of time, but it feels like in the last year or two, things have started to come on an upswing. Do you feel the same way, or do you feel like we're still in a stagnated period?
If you compare like where we are to where we are like 2 or 3 years ago, I would say it's hard to argue that we're not making like forward progress. I mean, we went from having like no competitive NA teams to having, NRG is like fairly competitive, M80 is fairly competitive, Wildcard has their, moments, especially, last year at the Shanghai Major, they looked pretty good. To have teams that aren't, Liquid and Complexity, that are like not offensive to watch on international competitions, would be definite progress, because for a while there, the teams we were sending to international tournaments were like Bad News Bears and like Party Astronauts, and they're perfectly fine domestic teams. But it was clear that like with no org support, with no ability to sign players, and no ability to attract European talent or good coaches or anything, they were kind of limited in what they're able to accomplish. So we're making progress, but ultimately it's pretty, it's pretty slow, and it's hard to say like we're any for me it's like we're still as far away from winning an S tier title than we have been for a long time. I mean, if you think about it, the last S tier title North America truly won was probably IEM Chicago 2019, which was won by Liquid 6 years ago now. Since then, NA has taken home no S tier trophy, and it's like if you look at teams like Vitality or Falcons or Navi or Spirit, do we have a team right now that can really compete against them? It's like probably not.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time here, and I do want to ask about some predictions before I let you go. So, both for the IEM tournament and Impact, what's your predictions here coming up for Dallas?
Okay, let me open some documents here. Let me get the
I
facts.
like that.
Okay, so look at IM Dallas. So Like NA predictions, you think? Is that kind of like what we're looking
Lay
at?
whatever you got down on me.
Okay.
That's
Well,
what you
here's like
got.
the so like here I'll hit you with like the opening round matches. So Vitality beats Legacy, like obviously,
Mm-hmm.
right? 3D Max Gamer Legion. Gamer Legion have looked pretty stinky at Asuna, but like 3D Max I don't think I've been up to a whole lot, so that's like a pretty much a toss up because it's also, I believe, oh no, it's the best of three this time around. So that could go either way. Mongols kicked the shit out of Furia. G2 probably beat Lane Vision. Lane Vision have been looking pretty good recently, but G2's, I don't know, G2's kind of been a mess. So it's like I just expect like institutional like momentum for G2 to win, but that could really go if they like shit the bed. I could totally see them losing to Lane Vision. BC game esports versus mouse sports. I would say clearly mouse sports. BC game's a mess right now. Apparently, they had Jacob step down. They have Perfecto standing in, but apparently Perfecto might not be able to get his visa in time. It's like the rumor on the Russian Telegram channels, so they might have to use like Cube as a stand-in. So like they're pretty much dead in the water. Team Liquid versus FaZe. The problem is like Liquid look good on paper, and but they're kind of a mess right now, and FaZe look good on paper, but they're kind of a mess right now. I think because FaZe is working to, they're still trying to integrate like Simple as his first, S tier LAN in a long time. I'm kind of looking towards Liquid to probably take that. Aurora versus Heroic. Damn. Um, maybe probably like Aurora. I would say Aurora is like a more well put together squad right now, but ultimately that's a good toss up because like Heroic are kind of one of those teams where it's like they win something and you're like, oh yeah, they won something. I'm always surprised by like Heroic's continued existence and their inability to like die essentially because they're gonna get players poached right after the major again, and I'm sure they'll come back and still being a top 20, 25, 30 team. So finally, Energy versus Furia. I mean, Energy versus Falcons, right? Probably Falcons. I mean, there's too much money, there's too much talent on that team to lose to Energy. Yeah, so those are my round one predictions. I more on like a more macro perspective, we have two NA teams in this tournament. We have, Liquid and Energy. Do I see either of them making playoffs? The problem is if Energy and Liquid both lose their opening matchups, then are going to be in the lower bracket, which only guarantees one NA team could make playoffs. And his history shows us like so if BC game lose against Mouse, that means they'll probably play like Energy, and Energy will wipe the floor with them, especially if they have to use Cube. Then it's tough. Like I don't see any NA teams making playoffs again at IM Dallas just because to get to playoffs, Energy or Liquid would have to beat like a combination of like probably Heroic, FaZe, Mouse, Aurora, and do I see them winning like all 4 or 5 matches, including beating each other? Probably not.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sad I'm not getting to go to Dallas or the major this year, but yeah, I'm not sad because I don't think I'm gonna miss. Like I can watch it all from my home very comfortably, and I
Right.
think those NA teams are gonna get knocked out pretty quickly. How do you before I want to hear your impact uh, thoughts as well.
Predictions. Okay, let me take a look. So on the second monitor here. So fortunately this year we have Comets and FlyQuest. They're not in the same group because the ESL used to love to put them in the same group so they would just kill each other essentially. The problem is the impact scene's kind of boring right now, right? In the sense that like the only team I see here that has like ability to win the event is like Imperial Female and Nip Impact. Everyone else is just kind of there to have a good time. Like Prototype Blaze in their group will probably make playoffs. Furia, so Group A, you have Furia, Comets, Prototype Blaze, and DMS. Of those teams, I'd probably say, Prototype Blaze and Furia will make it out. The hard thing with Supernova Comets is they're just like always continuously improving, but their rate of improvement. I don't think Empathy has ever won like a land match at an ESL Impact Finals, and even though this team is like probably the best like Empathy lineup ever, the best like Shimmer derivative, it still is going to be like really hard for them to claim a win over Furia, over Prototype Blaze. You could maybe see them win like against DMS, who I believe used to be Spirit female. Yeah, yeah, it used to be Spirits. Like they're not like bad or anything, but I'm like really hard pressed to see a world in which Supernova Comets make playoffs in the same world. where we go over to Group B. You have Imperial, you have NIP, you have MIBR, you have FlyQuest. So we know Imperial are going to make playoffs. So the problem is between those, that gives you three teams fighting for one spot. Do I think FlyQuest could beat like MIBR? Probably. Do I think they could beat NIP? That's going to be a lot harder of a task for FlyQuest. So overall, I didn't expect any NA teams to make playoffs, but I don't think we'll be seeing any of them, especially on like the grand final stage. I think this will just be another win for Imperial Female. I mean, anyone who's predicting anything other than Imperial winning winning another land is not being like intellectually serious because there's nothing that like says like this team can't just keep winning all the Impact finals.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, obviously we always root for and hope for NA, but yeah, I'm with you there. I'm curious to see how it plays out though. It's going to be one of the first times that I follow the Impact tournament during Dallas, so I'm excited for it. Well, and then I have a couple more questions, but I have
Hit me
I
with
have
them.
one more question before we get into these major predictions. My question for you is what do you think about this simple addition to the phase roster for these two tournaments? How do you think that's going to play out? Is it a gimmick or is it not necessarily a gimmick? Is it one
Mm,
last hurrah or is this a serious like contender?
I don't think this is like I don't think this is like the best thing this does. The best thing this could do for excuse me, the best thing this could do for like Simple's career is like they do like moderately well. Maybe they like make playoffs or they finish like top 12, and it's like oh Simple can Simple can still play at like a kind of okay level, and someone maybe he gets some interest in the off season. The problem is they still have to buy Simple from Navi, and I'm assuming he has a pretty hefty buyout. Like they'll never add him back to their roster, but are they gonna let Simple go for free? Obviously not. Like you never want to risk giving away a player like Simple and then have him, find himself again and then be like a terror. And you're like, oh yeah, shit. Like we gave that player away to another organization, especially one like Phase. Um, I it's hard because like Kerrigan can make the best out of any player, but someone like Simple who hasn't played, competitively. I mean, he did that one stand-in stint with Falcons, but like, does that really count? Like, I don't really. I mean, that was like a whole fucking thing. So like he hasn't played competitively in Counter Strike 2 like really. So it's gonna be a long time before he comes back on. The best thing you can, like I said, you can see from him is he puts up some decent results. He has some clips, and that kind of gets like the ball rolling on like, oh, we should finally we should like see what Sybil can do back in Counter Strike 2. The major is like where things might get a bit more interesting because they have a bit more runway. They have three losses as opposed to two losses to be knocked out there. And they're also in stage two, so it'll give them some time. Maybe they can all go to Austin. They can do some like they're probably boot camping with him right now. They can boot camp with him here. They can do some team bonding in Austin, and then bring him in. But I mean it's hard to be like bullish on on FaZe Clan when you have uh when you have all the issues still in the team. There's a reason they cut Brokey, and there's a reason like the team was like having a meltdown. And does any someone like Simple really fix that? Like probably not.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, but yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with us. Okay, I got two last questions, and one of them is, let's whip out those major predictions. Tell us how
Okay,
complexity is going to win the whole thing.
probably not. I mean, here's like the rub, right? Is you already know like there's like no chance Hallzerk's making it to this major. And so then you have like Junior and best will in the world. Like, I mean, Junior like knows how like I feel about like him. Like, there's a reason I'm blocked by him on X.com, the Everything app. Um, it's like he's a good player for like the NA tier two. Like, he's a guy who will post like a 1.25 in ECL. Like, he cooks there. He like knows ball. But the problem is, like we've seen him. We've already seen Junior multiple times on tier one. Like, does anyone really, ultimately, like, was he impressive on Furia? No. Was he impressive on Evil Geniuses? Like, not really. Did he, light the world on fire in Complexity? Like, also no. So it's in terms of being like a pure stand-in, like, it's not the worst option you could get. I assume they went for an NA player because they wouldn't have to worry about getting him a visa, as fraught with peril that is nowadays. And he's like the best opper you could get that's a free agent in North America. But as someone who is like coming in this team and potentially is like a replacement for Halzerk, I don't see him necessarily stacking up. I would think they could pretty comfortably make it out of stage one. If you look at the team, I mean, you have to remember stage one is essentially like the major qualifier. Now it's, with 32 teams in the major, it's like there's some, I mean, there's like some stinkers in there. There's like Fluxo, like Metas Sport, fucking like OG, you know, like fucking Bet Boom and stuff. So it's
Bet
like
Boom could take the whole thing. You don't know.
they won't. I mean, no, no, they won't. But like, it's like Kabatsu will go 3-1 or 3-2 in stage one, and then I think they'll go like 1-3 or 2-3 in stage two, and it'll be eliminated. Uh, Next up we have what wild card. I think wild card in the same boat. Like their team's competent enough where they can like they'll probably win their opening match against Fluxo, which will set them up to maybe play like a team like Namiga or FlyQuest next, and they could beat them. I think they'll probably go like 3-2 or 3-1 to make it to stage two. I mean, we saw they can play pretty well at Shanghai. Like they made top 16 at Shanghai, so I don't see there's any reason they can't do that. It's the same roster, right? Um, NRG is kind of a wild card because they've been looking really, really good recently in North America, but they're still a roster that's fundamentally unproven on land and a roster that's unproven against the European talent. You of course like look at like OC, Hex, and Nitro, and they've played a lot of international land, so they shouldn't, this shouldn't come as any surprise for them. Same with Daps as their coach. Daps has seen everything, but it's hard for you to say like whether or not whether or not we'll see like the energy that's been dominating North America make it out, or the energy that's like really struggled at Pro League, the energy that's that didn't make a land in all, that didn't really make a land in like all of 2024 because they kept falling short in qualifiers. Of the three NA teams in stage one, they're probably the one I'm most uncertain about just because we have so little to go on and we don't know if like their strong form on in North American competition will like carry over to international competition. With that, then we have stage two. We have M80 and TBH. Like it's so hard to predict when we get into stage two because we don't know what eight teams will pull through. And stage one's gonna be a bloodbath. Like there'll be teams that should have made it through that won't. There's teams that no one expected, like probably Tyloo or Genius Warriors that could just make it through. The scariest thing for them is it's like when they added Lake, they looked like they didn't really lose too many steps. But then if you look at like 2025 alone, they go to Pro League, they bomb out. They go to Blast, they bomb out. They go to Asana, they bomb out. Um, this event kind of serves as their last chance to really like I feel like do something with this 5-minute lineup. If they fail to kind of put up a couple, if they fail to make I think stage three would be ambitious for M80, but if they fail to put up a single win in stage two, you could honestly say like it might be time for changes. It might be time for I don't know, maybe Swisher to go or someone like Slacks to go or yeah, Slacks. But I don't know. I don't think they make it to stage three, and then stage three is like tier one, top competition to make to make playoffs at a major. Like Liquid might be the only team there, and I mean if I say like, do I see Liquid honestly claiming 3 wins against like Spirit, Mouse, Vitality, Falcons, all these teams? Like probably not. So I just sort of sum up my views. I think we'll probably have at least two of our three team. I think we'll have at least two of our three teams make it a stage one. I think we'll have from that maybe one team sneak through into stage three. From stage three, I don't think we're putting any teams through the playoffs. That just seems like a bridge too far for the current level of competition in North America.
Yeah, you never know what could happen. That's why we love competitive sports. But yeah, I'm with you. And I'm even going to take it a step further. I really think that I think that we have entered the Vitality Dynasty era recently with the ROPS addition to that roster. So I'm kind of expecting Vitality to. Vitality is at Dallas, right? Or are they only going to the major?
Are they at Dallas? That's a great question. I don't. Yeah, they're at Dallas.
So I think they're going to win Dallas, and I think they're going to win Austin Major. And I think the postseason roster shuffle in the summer is going to be quite a hullabaloo as everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to take down Vitality. Those are just my predictions, but I appreciate you sharing everything.
I
Yeah,
honestly, to jump in on that, I feel like so like other than Falcons picking up Kiyosuke, I honestly don't like know like one of the like there's I feel like there's like not a really big indication of like what teams will be making roster changes. I believe you'll see probably like G2 as reported like go after Saw and Sun Pius. Um, but I mean there hasn't been any like big rumors yet about European top flight roster transfers. Uh, so yeah, like you said, it'll be really interesting to see like what teams actually pursue roster changes because there's nothing so far, and to suggest like any big changes outside of the ones who are willing to spend money.
yeah, exactly. Well, all right. This is the last question. I asked the same question to everybody. Jeff, you can talk about esports or CS or life in general, but if you were to talk to your younger self, what is some advice you would like to give them?
Hmm. I think the key part of advice would be like how young are we talking here? Like,
Like a
because
like a
I'm pretty like unerring in my
10-year-old version of yourself, like little kid that still got a head full of dreams about the world.
I would say I'd probably tell them to maybe like focus. Hmm, that's a tough question there because it's like, would you ever like seriously suggest to someone to like go like be an esports journalist? Like probably not. Would you ever tell like your younger self like I don't know, like buy like like buy IBM shares or something? You know what I mean? It's like you would never tell someone like, hey, like you'll be like really, you'll make like lots of money, be really happy if you start like being in esports. Like that's never totally true. 10-year-old Jeff. I mean, like I would probably maybe say like I think the biggest thing like in my career that's kind of held me back is like a lack of like hard skills like image editing, programming, like video editing, stuff like that. Like all of the kind of content I put out is pretty like low tech in terms of like I mean I don't edit my interviews really. I might remove like a couple seconds at the start. My podcast I have someone else like do the overlay for me and all that shit. So I'd probably say like start learning more like hard skills that will allow you to diversify. Because I think in esports like the diversity is king in the sense that like you never know like when you're going to have to make a career change or when you're going to have to like start doing extra stuff at your company or or when you're going to have to be called into a new role. So that's like, for me, I'm really good at clickety clack on the keyboards, but like if I was really good at like video editing or really good at like programming, like I could be like the mustard at like so many other things. Or maybe like the advice would be like, I don't know, play like more Counter-Strike Source, like get like make friends with like a like 17-year-old Skadoodle or something, or make friends with like a 16-year-old Skadoodle or something, so you can like go and hang out at the Source scene. But I mean, my real advice would probably just be like to learn more like hard skills.
I think that's fantastic. Yeah, well put. And just to so you know, we also are pretty low budget here at laying it down. There's not.
You don't
Yeah, it's
say.
just me here in front of a green screen on my bed, overlaid onto the interview. So, but hey, that's the way we like it, raw and unedited. Jeff, thank you so much for joining. And that is
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.